Good day, students. This is Mathematics Grade 8. I'm your teacher, Mr. Billy James A. Quinones. Okay, let's start. This image seems that this is an NBA player. So let's see. According to www.nba.com/stats, out of 2,679 thrown shots in the free throw line, only 1,109 was made by Ben Wallace. His free throw percentage is 41.4%. So, uh, this is from www.usatoday.com. So, it seems that this Ben Wallace is not a very good free throw shooter because his free throw percentage is only 41.4%. So, what is the connection of this in our topic? So, later on, malalaman natin. So, kung mapapansin ninyo, out of 2,679 thrown shots, only 1,109 was made by Ben Wallace. So, let's check this video from www.youtube.com. This is Ben Wallace playing and trying to shoot in the free throw line.
But the control by T-Mac.
Williams came into the game averaging 4.8, under 5 points a game with 11, taking advantage of this opportunity as a starter.
He reaches in, knocks it away from Big Ben. Three and 14 to play in the half, and that will be called a shooting foul.
How about Ben Wallace? Williams pay for the reach-in.
Coming up at the half, fans will be on the clock with the 10-minute ticker. For just $61, see the distance taken on LeBron and the Heat February 11th with special pregame VIP shoot-around access. Plus, pick a second game in February and get all-you-can-eat concessions. This might be the best deal of the year. Be ready at halftime with the phone number 248-377.
Okay. So as you can see, hindi tumama yung bola dun sa unang try niya ng pag-shoot ng bola dun sa free throw line. And then the next one, he didn't make it. Okay, so may epekto kaya dito yung kanyang free throw percentage? Of course, it affects a lot. So, it is one of the statistics na tinitingnan ng mga player at ng mga coaches doon sa kanilang mga kalaban. So, para kung halimbawa penalty na or merong crucial na part ng game, ipa-foul nila yung mga player na mababa yung statistics dun sa free throw line. So, another player we have is this player. So, this is from www.nba.com. So, Stephen Curry's free throw percentage is equal to 93.4% for the year 2020 to 2021. So, imagine this is 93.4%, almost 100%. So, Stephen Curry is very good in a free throw line. So, in the history, he is one of the best free throw shooter in the NBA. So, Stephen Curry mostly, yung play ng Golden State Warrior, kung napapanood nyo, madalas sa kanya nakatuon yung play, sa kanya ibinibigay yung bola, lalo na kapag malapit na maubos yung oras, tas lamang sila, and then kailangan nilang manalo, syempre, sa kanya ibibigay yung play, sa kanya nakaplano yung laro, at kapag na-foul siya, at napunta siya sa free throw line, mas mataas yung chance na ma-shoot niya yung bola, kasi nga, he's a 93.4% shooter in the free throw line. So let's check this video from youtube.com.
Another free throw shooting contest between Stephen Curry and head coach Steve Kerr as the Warriors get set for the Memphis Grizzlies. Game 1 of the Western Conference semifinals Sunday at Oracle Arena. Here's a look at the latest free throw contest where a little math was needed at the end. It's here in its entirety.
Okay, so dito sa video na to, nanalo si Stephen Curry between doon sa kalaban niya sa kay Steve Kerr, which is his coach. So, mataas ka nga kasi yung free throw percentage nitong si Stephen Curry. So, ano kaya ang connection nito sa ating lesson? Um, ano kaya ang ating lesson? So, bakit ko ipinakita ang video na ito? Bakit ko ipinakita ang free throw percentage ni Ben Wallace at ni Stephen Curry? So, ano ang kahalagahan na malaman natin ang kanilang free throw percentage at paano kaya nakukuha ang free throw percentage ng mga player sa NBA, sa PBA, or sa iba pang mga liga ng basketball? So, let's check is experimental probability. So, experimental probability, um, ito ay isa sa mga uri ng probability na ating pag-aaralan. So, for today, what is our objectives? So, our objectives, so at the end of the lesson, you should be able to first define experimental probability. So next, illustrates an experimental probability and apply experimental probability in real life. So we have three objectives for today. How do we define experimental probability? So experimental probability is the ratio of the number of times an event occurs to the total number of trials or times the activity is performed. So this experimental probability is the ratio. When we say ratio, it is a fraction. When we say fraction, we are dividing numbers. So the it is the ratio of the number of times an event occurs. So the number of times an event occurs is our numerator to the total number of trials. The total number of trials is our denominator or times the activity is performed. So, or the number of times the activity is performed. So therefore, we are dividing here to get the experimental probability. To know more about this experimental probability and to understand this definition, of course, we need to work on the examples. So first one, this is, before that, this is from www.mathgoodies.com. Okay, so before we go to the example and to the activities, we, we have to check this formula in finding the experimental probability. So the experimental probability is equal to the number of favorable outcomes all over the number of trials. This is from www.mathisfun.com. Again, experimental probability is equal to the number of favorable outcomes all over the number of trials. Okay, so activity number one, let's play. Okay, there we're going to play battle flip game. So again, battle flip game. So what are you going to do here? So you will flip the bottle with water. So 5 times it in bottle ng mineral water, pwede. Okay. So the bottle should stand after flipping it. Record the result in a frequency table. So you know how to do the frequency table and find the experimental probability. Okay, so you can look at a bottle there in your house. Alam ko, nilalaro nyo na itong laro na ito eh. Ito yung nag-flip kayo ng bottle and then kapag napatayo ninyo, i-record nyo lang yung mga number of times na tumayo siya. Okay, ilang beses? 5 times natin yon itatry. So, we can have our sister or our brother para kalabanin natin doon sa game na ito. So, mahalaga ma-record natin sa ating frequency table at makuha natin ang experimental probability using our experimental probability formula na ipinakita natin kanina. Or, pwede rin isipin ninyo paano ko kaya makukuha ang probability in this experiment. Okay. So, another game you can try is shooting ability. So, in this game, each participant in this game will have a chance to shoot the ball in a ring. So, kung wala namang bola or ring, pwedeng kayo mag-improvise or alternative. Ang mahalaga, makapag-shoot kayo sa isang goal ng isang bagay. So, ball in a ring. So, kung mas maganda, kung may bola kayo, tapos may ring kayo sa bahay, okay, with a specific distance, 5 times. So, with your father, with your sister, with your cousin, pwede nyo itong itry. Um, and then record the result in the frequency table and find the experimental probability. Again, 5 times only. So, now, when you try it, we have questions for that. First question, after you tried it, if you tried it at home, um, this is our first question. First question is, who is the winner of the game? Okay, sino nanalo? It, is it the one with the highest score? Okay. So, sino kaya nanalo? Siyempre, yung may mas mataas na score yung nanalo. So, kung 5 beses yan, kung may naka-perfect, siya yung winner of the game. So, kung hindi man, kung sino yung mas mataas ang score. Next question. In flipping the bottle 5 times, what is the experimental probability if the bottle stands twice? Again, in flipping the bottle 5 times, what is the experimental probability if the bottle stands twice? So, what is the experimental probability? The experimental probability is 2 over 5. Very good. Okay. So another question here is, how did you solve for the experimental probability? How did you solve for that? How did you get the experimental probability? So uh, we use the formula for experimental probability, which is the number of favorable outcomes over the number of trials. So um, kanina sabi nga natin, if you flip the bottle or if you shoot the ball twice out of 5 trials, the experimental probability is 2 over 5. So, doon sa ginawa nyo experiment by flipping the bottle and shooting the ball, uh, it is I don't know the result, but the experimental probability is according to the result of your experiment. Okay. What is question number 4? Does the number of trial affects the experimental probability? In what way? Again, does the number of trial affects the experimental probability? In what way? Okay, of course, the number of trials affects the experimental probability because the number of trials is our denominator. So, um, the more the number of trials will be greater. And then, uh, the number of favorable outcomes, it depends upon your performance. So, dito tayo magpa-practice a lot. So, mas maganda yung favorable outcomes or mas maganda yung makuha natin na score. Kapag halimbawa, 10 times tayo nag-flip noong battle, kung mas mataas yung makuha mo na score, mas mataas yung experimental probability na makukuha mo. Okay. So, how about for number 5? Okay, in shooting game, suppose you and your father tried to shoot the ball 5 times. Your experimental probability of shooting the ball is 3 over 5 or 3/5, and your father is 1. Who among you is the best shooter? Why? Okay. Sino kaya yung mas magaling sa inyong dalawa ng inyong tatay? So, ng inyong father. So, kung ikaw ay may experimental probability of 3 over 5 or 3/5 and your father has an experimental probability of 1, who is the best shooter? Or who among you is better? So the best shooter is your father because uh, your father made to shoot the ball or uh, success in or he made to shoot the ball 5 times out of 5. So that is 1 over or 5 over 5 or 1 or 100%. While you uh, your experimental probability is 3 over 5. So dito natin mapapasok yung ating pinag-uusapan kanina about NBA. So it is very important for us to practice more of what we are doing. So ibig sabihin kung basketball player ka, mahalaga na titingnan mo or papraktisin mo yung pag-shoot ng bola kasi doon nakasalalay yung statistics or yung percentage at yung ikapapanalo ng inyong kupunan or ng inyong team. Kasi uh, pag pagtaas ng percentage ng experimental probability mo, paglaki ng tsansa na ma-shoot mo yung bola. Paano mo magagawa yun? You need to practice a lot. For example, in flipping the bottle, you need to practice a lot to earn more experiment or to gain experimental probability. So doon din sa NBA, ganoon din ang ginagawa nila. Nagpa-practice. Like Ben Wallace is practicing a lot to increase his free throw percentage. Okay, so first example in experimental probability. Let's deal with the example. Marco has a bag of marbles. He picked a marble, recorded the color, and placed back inside the bag. He repeated this process 20 times and recorded the results in frequency table. Okay, so the colors selected are red, blue, yellow, and green. The frequency are 3, 7, 4, and 6. Okay, these are the questions. What is the experimental probability that a marble selected from the bag will be red? Okay, so again, 20 yung marbles. So what is the experimental probability that a marble selected from the bag will be red? Let's okay. The solution, the probability or the experimental probability is equal to the number of favorable outcomes. What is the number of favorable outcomes? For red, that is 3. What is the number of trials? That is 20. So we have 3 over 20. That is the probability or the experimental probability that we have red selected by Marco. Okay. Number 2. What is the experimental probability that a marble selected from the bag will be yellow? Again, what is the experimental probability that a marble selected from the bag will be yellow? Okay, the solution, experimental probability is the number of favorable outcomes all over the number of trials. So the probability that yellow is selected is 4 over 20. Because yellow, he, he selected yellow 4 times out of 20 trials. So P, yellow, or the probability of experimental probability that it is a yellow is 1 over 5. Why? Because we simplify 4 over 20, which is 1 over 5, or 1/5. Based on Marco's experiment, which color is he most likely to select from the bag? Okay, aling kulay daw yung um, most likely na napipili niya dun sa bag? The answer is blue because that is the highest number of um, times na naselect niya yung color blue. That is 7. Based on Marco's experiment, which color is he least likely to select from the bag? Okay, the answer is red. Okay, essential question. What is experimental probability? After dealing with the example, after using the formula, what is experimental probability? Okay, experimental probability is the ratio of the number of times an event occurs to the number of trials or times the activity is performed. Okay, another one. What is the importance of probability in real life? Ano kaya ang kahalagahan nito sa real life? Okay, that question I want you to reflect on. I want you to think of what is the connection of probability in real life. How do we apply this and how can we connect this to real life? Kanina, may pinakita tayong mga example, real life problems um, about experimental probability. Now, I want you to take a look at your surroundings and your environment and check uh, what is the application of probability in real life settings. Okay, what is the formula in finding experimental probability? So the formula in finding experimental probability is again number of favorable outcomes all over the number of trials. Okay, let's try to solve this. Number 1, true or false? Experimental probability is the ratio of the number of times an event occurs to the total number of trials or times the activity is performed. True or false? Okay, what is your answer? Okay, later on, we will answer that. Next, in a cell phone factory, 100 cell phones were checked, out of which 50 were found defective. What is the experimental probability a cell phone is defective? A. 1/2, B. 5 over 10, C. 50 over 10, or D. 50 over 100. Okay, you write the letter of your correct answer. Okay, let's have number 3. For number 3, based on question number 2, if only 10 cell phones are defective, what is the experimental probability a cell phone did not work properly? A. 1/2, B. 1 over 10, C. 10 over 10, or D. 10 over 100. Okay, for number 4, you roll a die 10 times. 3 of those times, you get a 6. What is the experimental probability of rolling a 6? A. 1 over 10, B. 2 over 10, C. 3 over 10, or D. 6 over 100. Okay, you choose the letter of your correct answer. And let's have the last question. You ride a jeep 20 times. 19 of those times, you saw your handsome math teacher riding in the same jeep. What is the experimental probability that you didn't saw your math teacher? Number 1, 1/2, or letter A, 1/2, letter B, 1 over 10, letter C, 1 over 20, letter D, 19 over 20. Okay, let's have number 1. Question: true or false? Experimental probability is the ratio of the number of times an event occurs to the total number of trials or times the activity is performed. Here's the answer. The answer is true. Okay, check your answer if you get the correct one. Next one. For number 2, in a cell phone factory, 100 cell phones were checked, out of which 50 were found defective. What is the experimental probability a cell phone is defective? A. 1/2, B. 5 over 10, C. 50 over 10, D. 50 over 100. So the answer is letter A. Based on question number 2, if only 10 cell phones are defective, what is the experimental probability a cell phone did not work properly? A. 1/2, B. 1 over 10, C. 10 over 10, D. 10 over 100. The answer is letter B. Okay, for number 4, you roll a die 10 times. 3 of those times, you get a 6. What is the experimental probability of rolling a 6? A. 1 over 10, B. 2 over 10, C. 3 over 10, D. 6 over 100. The answer is letter C. Last question, you ride a jeep 20 times. 19 of those times, you saw your handsome math teacher riding in the same jeep. What is the experimental probability that you didn't saw your math teacher? A. 1/2, B. 1 over 10, C. 1 over 20, D. 19 over 20. The answer is letter C. Okay. If you get the perfect score, then very good. If you get 4 over 5, then it is good. You need to review some more of the information we discussed in this topic, experimental probability. If you get 3 over 5, 2 over 5, 1 over 5, it's okay. Just try your best, and I know you can do it, and you can you can have higher than what you get now. So I believe in you, and you can do it. That's all for today. Thank you, and God bless. Keep safe.